Hello, everyone, and welcome along to your Thursday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett, and I'm your host this evening as we look at the latest Rangers transfer news and rumours. Joining me to do so on his season debut, or maybe it's pre-season debut, we should say, is Craig Hughes. Craig, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Just like everybody, just looking forward to getting the game started now. To be honest, so yeah, enjoying all the rumours and speculations, but ready to go again this season.
Yeah, absolutely. The rumours aren't stopping. There's plenty of, especially if you're a winger with any British club, it seems to be that you're being linked with Rangers at this moment in time, and we'll go on to speak about that in a little bit. But I think the big news today has been around the goalkeeping position and rumours that Carl Rushworth, I keep thinking he's a FIFA regen kind of name from there. But Carl Rushworth, the Brighton goalkeeper, has been linked to Rangers today, which raises a lot of different questions, particularly around the future of Jack Butland, also potentially the future of Liam Kelly there as well. So we'll get stuck into that. We'll talk about wingers. JD Gazama was one who was linked earlier in the week. Kieran from the podcast a message just before we came live and said this has been going on too long. Why haven't we signed him yet? I think the rumour broke 48 hours ago. So it just shows you where people are at and where their patience is with all of that as well. So Craig, where are you with everything? It seems like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different rumours. There's a lot of different positions and players being discussed. People are getting a bit impatient at times as well, given how quickly some of the other signings have been made.
Yeah, I'm probably the same. I'm getting a little bit impatient, but I'm reminding myself that a lot of teams are just kind of starting off. They're not even back for pre-season. So it's going to take a bit of time to get everything right. And what I've been kind of trying to tell myself is we won't have this full squad in a perfect condition come the end of this window. Now we had a lot of work to get done, and as much as people probably don't want to hear that, we won't be perfect by the end of this window. It's going to take a couple of windows to get it absolutely right. But no, I'm like anyone though, desperate to get players in, desperate to get a good few out. And I think my more worry is just now, as I'm getting anxious about if players don't go, how does that affect incomings? And how that's going to all balance out. But I mean, it's still very early days.
It is very early days, and I think, like you say, the actual end of the transfer window is the end of August, which is 6-7 weeks away or so. We're all looking at it through the lens of we're playing Panathinaikos in 12 days, and we all think we've got to be ready for then, and we don't want to be sleepwalking into a bad European start, which then gets a season off on the wrong foot as such. But there are a few different milestones for us as a club. We've got that Panathinaikos game. As kind of the official start of the competitive season. You've then got the start of the league season, which you don't want to be underprepared for and dropping points early on. And then you've got the end of the actual transfer window, which is what the club will be looking at as a whole and trying to get players in for then. So it's actually, Craig, it's three different stages almost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's ridiculously early to be starting qualifiers. And it just, I think what's scared everyone a bit is that we're only going to watch the team in one friend really before they're played, and that lineup really gives everybody the fear that it'll be close to that starts at Panathinaikos. So yeah, it's a difficult one starting so early. But yeah, you're right. It's going to keep going right down till the end of the window. There'll be changes and there'll be last minute switches. We would love to have everything done and have first day of pre-season. You've got a settled squad, but football just doesn't work like that anymore.
Absolutely, it absolutely does not. Right, let's go on to talking about today's rumour. I mentioned Carl Rushworth from Brighton being the first goalkeeper we've really been linked with this summer, but he is linked with a season-long loan, which I think is interesting in itself, and we'll go on to talk about that. Before we do, Craig, I just want to touch on Jack Butland and I guess his suitability for playing in a Russell Martin team, where your head is with him as we after last season, how that went. So first of all, do you think Jack Butland, as it stands just now, has what it takes to be Rangers number one for a Russell Martin team?
I don't think so. I think the ball at his feet, I think he's coming out of a really bad season. And I just think he'll struggle to play in that kind of setup. If we were kind of as we were before, then maybe I'd say, look, he could have went back to the form he was a couple of years ago. But the fact he's now going to have to come into a Russell Martin team, play everyone out the back, I don't know. It doesn't fill me with confidence that Russell Martin's come in and went, "You're my number one. I've got full faith in you." I don't think there's been much noises coming out the club, so which makes me think they are still looking, on that side. I think the change of the goalkeeper coach as well probably has a bit to do with it. I think they've probably waited till someone could come in and assess the options from there. But I just feel as if there's nothing that's really told me that Jack Butland is our number one for next year.
Yeah, there wasn't a great deal of confidence given, I guess, in the weekend's friendly there. There's not been much said about Jack Butland at all in terms of trying to give him reassurance even through the media, or just give him the bit of confidence boost that he's maybe had beforehand. So it's really interesting as to where that sits. I mean, Luke Gibson 97 says Butland was a bomb scare with his feet last season, even when under no pressure. And I think we all saw that, especially when he tried to use his left foot a lot of the time and pass across his own goal. He was really struggling on that one. Craig, he made a lot of errors last season, and that was a bit of a switch from the season before. Is that something that you think he can recover from, or do you think actually he's probably reverted to the norm there?
I mean, I think as a goalkeeper, I think he can recover from it. I think he'll get back to good form. There's a good goalkeeper in there. There's no doubt about that. His first season with us wasn't luck by any means. But I just think that he probably, as I said, he goes to this way of playing out the back. There's going to be mistakes. He makes a couple of mistakes early on in the season, and it's very, very tough to recover from that then. So I don't think, as I said, I'd love him. I'd love to be wrong. He seems a really likeable guy and a good goalie. So hopefully, I'd love to see him turn it around. But I just, I'm just not sure if I see him recovering at Rangers. But I think somewhere else he'll go on and he'll be a good goalkeeper again.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like you say, he just seemed like a decent guy, but he's that still started from that Manchester United game that we were at actually, and then it just kind of went all downhill from there, and it just seemed to compound week after week, game after game, and by the end of the season, no one had any confidence. Even Barry Ferguson didn't have any confidence in him, to the point that Liam Kelly was coming in there as goalkeeper, but a lot of people have said that Jack Butland seems to struggle with the ball at his feet and with the confidence. I spoke there about his left foot and how that's really a weakness of his that it seemed to be last season. To me, that suggests he won't work in that Russell Martin system. Do you think you have the same view?
Yeah, I'm of the same view. I think I don't see it working there. I think Russell Martin's probably hedged his bets. I mean, they've not went in and said anything that they'll regret. They haven't pinned all their hopes on him. I think they'll be wary of there is big games coming up and you'll potentially need them for there. But yeah, I think I'm probably the agreement that to recover and then to adapt to this way of playing that we're going to have under Russell Martin. I think he'll struggle, and I agree with you in terms of at the weekend. I know it didn't really matter who started in sense of the outfield squad, but I really think you would have sent a message by maybe putting Butland in and giving him the armband or something. You would then be saying, yeah, this is my goalie, I've got full faith in him, which he didn't do, which again, I'm not saying is a huge negative, but I just think it told me that he's probably waiting to see if we can bring in somebody else.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's watched Rangers over the last towards the end of last season and probably in the game at the weekend there as well would probably agree, I guess, that Liam Kelly is better with the ball at his feet. Not as imposing a figure as Jack Butland is in terms of stature, but very much better with the ball at his feet. Hugo Bear says more dominant centre halves will take some of the pressure off the goalkeeper. Craig, I agree with that, but I also think the hallmark of a good Rangers goalkeeper has always been not being able to make a large number of saves, but more about making the saves when they're needed and when they matter.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I also think we have had bad defensive performance before, and goalkeepers would stand up to that and still stand out. I think back to Stefan Klos, a couple of years he played in a pretty poor Rangers team and won Player of the Year. So your goalkeeper can still stand out, even with. But I do agree, a settled back four certainly helps a goalie. And you're right, it's all about the concentration at Rangers. You can, you can not have anything to do. You make one mistake, and you're grilled for it. That's what cost us a couple of points. So it's a very unique position being the Rangers goalkeeper compared to goalkeepers at other clubs.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think we obviously have been spoiled with the quality of goalkeepers we've had over recent times. Alan McGregor is the epitome of what I guess is required from a Rangers goalkeeper in terms of being able to step up in those big moments with some outstanding saves over the years. But he was always he always felt you could count on him. Gary O'Sullivan says Butland was great at first, might be better with a decent defence in front of him, and Luke Gibson 97 back in with. Butland's a confidence keeper. When he's on it, he's on it. Once he makes a big error, it's like a domino effect for the next few games. Craig, what do you make of the links to Carl Rushworth? I'm going to call him Carl Rushmore there, as if Mount Rushmore. Carl Rushworth from Brighton. A young goalkeeper, didn't play much football last season, was on loan at Swansea the season before, played 46 games with 10 clean sheets that season. So he's not fresh out the packet as such. He has played first team football in a full season at first team level in the Championship. But is that a link that you're surprised with?
I wouldn't say I'm overly surprised, but I don't know. I can't lie and say I know much about the guy. I'm not surprised that I don't think that we were ever going to spend big on a goalie coming in. I don't think he was ever going to permanently resolve that during this summer, and we just have too much work to do in other areas, and it's a big risk. Bringing in our goalkeeper, you spend big money on it. There's no guarantees. So bringing in a goalie on loan, as maybe an option. There could be a case when if this is real, if this is real interest and it comes to fruition, it could be that the three of them are in for a short period of time, and then if he proves himself, then Butland maybe moves on towards the end of the window. So I'm not overly surprised. It's more a short term, kind of move if we do go that route, because as I said, I don't think you can really go out and spend big money on an experienced goalie while Butland's still there.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the interesting part. I think it's very much looking at, okay, if he comes in, he's coming in on loan from a Premier League club, are they expecting him to play first team? Is that kind of when Rangers have made on that side of things? Is he good enough to be a number one, or is he actually someone that they are saying Jack Butland you'll start the season, but they've got this guy breathing down your neck, and it's up to you to keep your slot, which is something that could happen as well. If he does come in though, I know you said about having potentially the three for a little bit. Surely that means one of them leaves out of Butland and Kelly if he does come in.
Yeah, one of them would go out the three of them. I just mean I don't see him rolling the dice right before the Panathinaikos game, and you never know. But I could see a situation where somebody comes in on loan, you've got the three keepers, and then towards the end of the window, one goes, or even it kind of falls on to the January window and somebody wants a move from there. I don't think we'll keep any of them for any length of time, that all three of them, but it could be a situation where there's three in before one goes. It just depends. But the one thing I will say as well that's kind of gave me comfort is, regardless if we bring someone in or we stick with Butland for a bit, I do think, I'm trying to think to myself, the worst case scenario is Liam Kelly has to play a little bit, and I don't think he's a bad keeper. I think he's dependable number two. So I think looking at it, the worst case scenario is he has to play a few games, and I don't think he's ever really let us down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Liam Kelly, I don't know what it is about Liam Kelly. He doesn't give me the confidence that he could play week in, week out for Rangers and he would be a standout and he'd be exactly what we need. But if he's there to fill in for a few games, I do have that confidence. Even we saw him in Old Firm games last season. We saw him come into big ties and he was absolutely fine. Can you put your finger on, Craig, why it? Because I think the way I've described feeling there about Liam Kelly, and he's okay for a few games but not for the full season, is mirrored by quite a lot of Rangers fans I've spoken to. Why do you think that opinion is there, and why do you think that opinion kind of exists? And is it harsh on Liam Kelly?
I don't think it's harsh. I think it probably relates to a few goalkeepers we've had in the past as well. John McLaughlin, when he was number two, he never had any issues with him stepping into the number, stepping in and playing. When he became number one, you then realise he's not at the level, and there's more scrutiny on him as a goalie. I think the same back in the day when Neil Alexander stepped in and never ever let you down. Was a solid number 2. I think just Liam Kelly, I don't think you're being harsh. I think that's the level a goalie is. He's a good goalie. He's got a great attitude. He's by all accounts a great trainer, and he steps up when you need him. He's not at the level for a number 1 at Rangers. I think it's the probably simple fact of that. He's just not that. So I think when he plays more games, there's more expectation, there's more scrutiny. It's different being the nailed down number 1. People are looking at you differently. There's different, pressures on you. So I think it's a little bit different, but I think generally it's just because he's that level of goalie, which again, I don't mean disrespectfully in any way. He's just a solid number 2 for us.
Yeah, we've got 2 very contrasting opinions here. So we've got the sniper saying Kelly is a very solid number 2. It's Butland we need to replace, in my opinion. And then we've got David Craig saying, sorry, but Kelly ain't a good number 2, never mind number 1. Just my thoughts. So always have that diversity of opinion in the Rangers support, and not more so than displayed by those comments. Elsewhere in the squad, we're still trying to strengthen all sorts of positions. I've seen people still pointing out we probably need 3 or 4 first team starters still to feel like we're in a positive position going into the new season, whether that's the first stage of Panathinaikos, the stage of the league season, or the end of the transfer window. But wingers seems to be the order of the week. It's quite crazy, Craig, how many wingers we've actually been linked with, all of the same age profile, all of the same style, but so many different names.
Yeah, well, we've literally been linked with every winger you can search, can't you? And as Russell Martin kind of said in the press conference regarding players, some of them will be, on the money, and others will be just names plucked out of nowhere, to be honest with you, just because they fit that kind of mould. But we badly need a few positions, but wingers is probably the most desperate need of players right now. You look at that squad, it's got Cortez in there, Finlay Curtis, who proved he can possibly be an option for us for the early part, but we badly need proper wingers in there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting in terms of the profile of player we're looking at. I mean, I mentioned JD Gazama at the start there, and we'll come and talk about him a bit more, but 21 years old, really talented, really quick, a bit raw. And then today we were linked with Abu Kamara from Hull City, again, really quick, young, a bit raw, but clearly got talent. Palati, I can't remember his surname, from Tel Aviv. He was also the same, 21, really young, but clearly got talent and clearly got a lot of pace about him. It feels like it's been so long since we've had a good winger at Rangers, and I'm going to be a bit controversial here and say that I don't think Ryan Kent was even fit into that category at any point. But why do you think we've struggled with wingers, first of all, in recent years, and then secondly, does it excite you that we're now looking at these profiles?
Mm-hmm. I think we've struggled to have a balance. So we've always had kind of one decent winger on one side and another side we've not addressed. And I think that's led to us being very, very lopsided. I think we've also been heavily reliant on fullbacks before, which has meant, they're the ones bombing up in the wing, getting the crosses into the box. So the wingers probably played a bit of a different role in there. I think pace, I want to not overcomplicate it. In Scottish football, a winger who's direct with pace and athleticism, who can get in behind, is vital to us. We've really missed that a lot. So these kind of guys excite me. I think that they played in the Championship, so they can deal with the physicality and that side of things as well. But I just think we've been badly missing a kind of balance and a profile for actually what we want out of a winger.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think that's a really interesting point in terms of when teams know that we are a bit lopsided, for want of a better description, and they know that, say, Cherny last season, for example, they can just push us constantly out to the left-hand side and feel like they're nullifying the attacking threat that we have, which they did on many occasions in many games. Whereas if you've got people on both sides that have that threat, they're not quite sure where to push you, and that's when you can really hurt teams. So 100% get that on the balance side of things. JD Gazama from Sheffield Wednesday, rumoured, I think it was 48 hours ago now, that it started to come out. They're obviously training at St George's Park this week alongside us and Sevilla, amongst other teams. It has gone quiet over the last 2 days, but when it did come to the fore, it seemed as though it was pretty much almost over the line. Rumours of £2.5 million, which, going by Sheffield Wednesday fan reaction, seems to be an absolute steal, which is really encouraging. I think we're so used to hearing about new players or getting new players, and teams aren't that fussed about whether they leave or not leave. Feels like there's been a step change this summer, and teams are a bit shocked and surprised by the players that are leaving, how much they're leaving for in terms of fees being a bit lower, and also the fact that they are leaving, are even being allowed to let go. So what do you make of JD Gazama? It's one that I think a lot of people have since watched a lot of his highlights on YouTube, and he's really excited a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I've done the same. Kind of looked at a few of his videos. He does look a really exciting player, and I think you're right. Often, what we look at is the feedback, like what the teams are saying about them, what their fans are saying about them. Because you're right. Normally, it's mixed. I mean, most Rangers players that leave, you'll see a very mixed. On most, the majority of them, not some of them. But for everybody to saying, how good he was, and you see those videos with his pace, and how much trouble he can cause teams. So, no, I think it's one that excites me certainly. I think it's exactly what we're needing: that pace, athleticism, skill in the team. That he could really add something on there. So, no, I'm excited about that one. Hopefully, it's one that kind of goes through this week. I'm hopeful them training next to each other means it's quite quickly done.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of comments there saying it's just to be announced, it's all signed and done. I think Rangers Review spoke about that earlier on today with regards to this kind of status of that transfer, and kind of talking about as though it just needs to be gotten over the line. Does the delay concern you at all?
I mean, not really. I mean, you can say that for any transfer. They do take time sometimes to get it all over the line. So, not really. I wouldn't say. I mean, if this drags on another week, then I'd start saying, look, then you start to worry really. But a few days, it can certainly happen. So, I wouldn't say I'm worried. If those sort of outlets are coming out and saying it's all but done, then I'd be quite confident. And it's going to happen though. It's going to happen that we go for guys and it's going to fall through, or they're going to go elsewhere. So I wouldn't say I'm really worried. You've hardly heard about a player, and then 2 days later, they must sign. That's the way it just kind of goes, isn't it? So I'm not worried. I think he will. I think he will sign. I think it will happen the next couple of days.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And as I said, we've been linked with plenty of wingers over the last few days, and I imagine that's going to continue, because that is an area of the squad we definitely need to strengthen. Craig, once that's done, though, I think all attention will turn to that forward line and what's going to happen with Igaman and Dessers, and are they going to stay? Are they going to go? If they go, who comes in? Dort Turgeman's name keeps coming back time and time again. If we get the wingers, we focus on the forward line. Centre of midfield seems to be okay in a lot of people's minds at this moment in time. I guess the one standout is an experienced centre half for me. We're linked with Connor Cody. JB had heard that he was confident that he was going to sign. Seems to have been some goalposts moved on Leicester's side from that perspective, but Connor Cody, by all accounts of what I read today, is still really keen on the move. Do you think that experienced centre half is where we need to go next? I've heard people talking about a left back as well, potentially, because they don't have confidence in Jeff Day and Ridvan. But is the centre half the next spot after winger and striker?
I mean, the striker's probably going to wait until everything kind of falls into place, which gives me a bit of worries that we miss out on targets, because it takes a bit longer to get the deals done for Dessers and Igaman. So that's probably where I'm worrying about the most, that we miss out on guys, just because we can't go out and spend big money on a striker until one of them's sold, or at least one of them sold. For me, centre backs right now, I think you can get away with what we've got, but I would like to see an experienced head come in there, and a good centre back. As I said, we've got some cover in there. I think Tav has proved that the odd game you can put him into centre back and he'll be no problem. But I just feel as if we need 4 out and out centre backs to be competing for the jerseys. Left back's one I definitely think we need to improve. I think it looks like Redvan will be gone. Yefty, I'm not sold on at all. I think throughout the season he kept making mistake after mistake, and then you've got young Robbie Fraser as well. So I think we will probably bring in a left back. I hope so on that side. I think Max Aarons, I think he can play there as well, can't he? He can play there if he needs be. So it's maybe not a major priority, but I would probably like to see us strengthen there as well.
Yeah, I think if you ever needed a sign that a player was no longer wanted at a football club, mark up Redvan and his changing squad number from 3 to 33. He's been sent beside the janitor's closet, hasn't he, with that number as far away as he can from the starting lineup changing room part. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. We obviously spent a significant chunk of change on Redvan and constantly hearing about interest from Turkey, but it never seems to materialise in the form of a bid at all. So it'll be really interesting to see how that one develops. I guess as we move forward, what do you reckon happens, or where do you think we'll be if Iggaman and Dessers start the season with us as the two main strikers? I think I would be really down on our opportunities this season if that was the case. Maybe more from a Dessers than an Iggaman perspective, but I would lose a lot of confidence in what we can achieve this season if those two were still at the club and leading the forward line. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. In terms of Dessers, there's no doubt he contributes, right? There's no doubt he puts up the numbers throughout the year, but I just don't think you can count on him as your number 9 when when a big chance falls in a crucial game. When he's off form, he is so off form, and I think it affects our full team. The link-up play, the midfielders don't function because he can't hold the ball up well. Now, when he's on form, he's a very good striker. He can offer teams something, but I just don't think we can rely on him. And I think we need to sell when his value is probably at its highest it's going to be. Iggaman, again, I think he's got so much potential. I would probably like to see his cash in because I think there is still a risk. There is still, he's still got a bit to go. And I think there's all sorts of worries. If you don't progress the same way, I think we do need to, start that player trading model and probably get him a move. And I think he's looking for it as well. I don't think he's been in any way difficult to deal with. I think his attitude, by all accounts, has been pretty good, which two of them you've got to credit them for. They're not kicking and screaming for a move. But I think we do need to get those moves done sooner so that we can get that marquee signing, the striker, which you would hope it would be. You would hope 2 strikers come in and, you can then start to build something from there. But I agree with you, I'd probably feel a wee bit negative if we're going with those 2. And Danilo, again, he's just had too much of a stop-start career so far for me. Great if he can contribute throughout the year. There's some sort of player in there, but I just, again, can't rely on him.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I think what people are saying here, Paul Garrigo saying we'll be in trouble 100% if they both stay, but what Hugo Bear says here in terms of need a poacher, I'm very much on that train of thought. I think as we go forward, we were on the podcast on Tuesday with JB, and we were talking about likes of Luke de Jong and Jamie Vardy and the links with those. I think those are the kind of players that we need, players that are just going to get one chance and take one chance, especially in the league, and just give us that platform to build off as we move through. And I think that's going to be so important. But it's a very different style of striker to the one that we have just now, and I think that's where we just need to restructure a little bit with where we are and where we are with the squad. That's us just reaching the half-hour mark, which is the kind of target time frame for these midweek podcasts, just short and sharp, talking about the latest news. But thank you very much to Craig for joining us. Thank you very much to everyone for joining and listening. I did see, I'm just going to try and find it. There we go. A comment from David Craig that said, just subscribe, lads. If you have enjoyed the content, if you do enjoy our podcast, please make sure you like the video. First of all, that helps us massively, but do subscribe as well, so you get a notification every single time we go live or upload a new podcast, and it means you don't miss out on any of the content we've got as we go forward. We've plenty of podcasts relating to Rangers news, plenty of match reactions, live from the Ganch at Ibrox, or post away games as well. So make sure you don't miss out on any of that content coming up as the season progresses. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Till next time.